Place: Prague. Year: 1938. People: Czech Parliament. Imagine this. The year is 1938. Europe is trembling under the shadow of Adolf Hitler. Czechoslovakia, a young and fragile democracy, finds itself at the very doorstep of disaster. The German army is preparing to march, and everyone knows the threat is real. In Prague, the parliament meets in tense emergency sessions. Ministers argue, citizens whisper in fear, and newspapers scream headlines of war. The nation is staring down the possibility of invasion. And yet, in the middle of all this chaos, the lawmakers make a decision so strange, so wildly unexpected, that it still echoes through history books today. They pass a law, not against the Nazis, not against traitors, not against spies, but against aliens. Yes, extraterrestrials. A law that stated, if beings from another planet should one day attack, the people of Czechoslovakia had the legal right to defend themselves. To understand how bizarre this was, you need to picture the atmosphere. Prague in 1938 was not a city thinking about little green men. It was a city surrounded by real enemies. Hitler had already annexed Austria, and his eyes were now fixed on the Sudetenland, the border regions of Czechoslovakia where many ethnic Germans lived. Tension was unbearable. Soldiers were on alert. Families were preparing for evacuation. And yet, in the Chamber of Parliament, this alien law was debated seriously. Some politicians even argued that it was important to think about all possible threats to the nation, earthly or otherwise. Imagine the scene: oak-paneled halls, the sound of urgent voices, the smell of ink and paper. One delegate shouts about German tanks. Another insists on legal clarity about extraterrestrial invaders. In that mix of fear and absurdity, the vote was cast. The law passed. It wasn't satire. It wasn't a joke. It was written into the official record of Czechoslovakia. Why would they do this? Historians still debate the motives. Some say it was a clever distraction, a way to ease the unbearable pressure in Parliament by laughing, even briefly, at the absurdity of their situation. Others argue it was symbolic, a message to the people that their leaders were willing to face any threat, no matter how impossible. And there is a darker interpretation too, that maybe, just maybe, this was a sign of how desperate the Czechs had become. When you cannot protect yourself from the real monsters at your door, you legislate against imaginary ones instead. And that irony hits hard, because when the German occupation finally came, no alien invasion law could stop it. The tanks rolled in. Prague fell silent. And a people who once joked about little green men were forced into the harsh reality of Nazi rule. Yet, this curious piece of legislation has survived as one of the strangest examples of human imagination in politics. It reminds us that in moments of fear, people often cling to humor, to absurdity, even to fantasy, as a shield. And isn't that a deeply human thing to do? Facing the worst crisis in their nation's history, the Czechs wrote one of the most unusual laws in the world. Think about it. Empires collapse, borders change, wars begin and end. But in 1938, in a small country on the edge of catastrophe, a parliament decided to prepare its people for aliens. They couldn't stop the Nazis, but they left us with a story so strange, so unique, that nearly a century later, we're still telling it. And maybe, in a way, that law did exactly what it was meant to do. It gave the people, even for a brief moment, the feeling that they could face anything, no matter how terrifying, no matter how unlikely, even if it came from the stars.